you teased the seed oil thing before and how you actually worked as like refining these to be used in machinery. And it's funny because colloquially, one of the things we say now about seed oils is like, these are engine lubricants that we shouldn't be eating. And you actually like, yeah, no, they are. I did that as a job. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So out of college, I had some loans and I wanted to pay them off as quickly as possible. So I was working my butt off and took a job in strategy and management consulting. And so I worked on a variety of different projects, which I found really exciting, even though it was esoteric and bizarre stuff like pipeline technology or, financial systems, and just hopping from one project to the next. But ultimately, I started working a lot in the energy sector, and that led me to the alternative energy sector, which was, this is back in between 2006 and, let's say 2011, 2012. The years where we were already talking about carbon credits in the financial system, and we were talking about alternative energy and biofuels and biodiesels and electric cars and hybrids and that sort of thing. So anyway, it was kind of like especially right before the recession. It was a bubble in the green energy space, almost, you might say. And so I was really encouraged by the fact that I love working toward a greater good and hopefully helping to save the world in one way or another. And so being young and naive, I kind of took at face value what people were saying about that in the early climate change or just kind of green energy movement of those days. And that's not even early, but earlier than now anyway. And so working on these projects and looking at fuel and how you dilute it to make it go through pipelines, and also some of the engineering that's involved, like in going to these on-site visits and that sort of thing. Learning about these fuels, I, from a very different perspective, learned about the food industry because, we have this problem of all of this oil that is not really food grade. And by the way, it wasn't really food grade when it was in the fryolators and that sort of thing either. But here's where it's coming from, and here's where it's going. And there was this competition back then between, do we use this fuel that we're growing, from the field and put it into cars or into people's mouths?
Wow.
And that was a big thing, still is kind of a thing. Or there's this other much tinier marketplace of the spent fryolator oils. And what can we do with that? And it turns out that back in the day, almost every tractor and the farm equipment would run on whatever oil you gave it. Diesels can basically run on anything. And so to test this theory, and as I was learning this, I bought an old Mercedes diesel in 1985 and ran it on vegetable oil and a biodiesel blend. And I drive it across the country, and every time I'm stopping at a stoplight, it smells like fried chicken or potatoes. And the thing, one of the issues with it was that it tends to gob up and gel up when it gets below like 40 degrees and it approaches freezing. So I remember by Santa Fe, I needed to rip out the fuel filters and replace it because it was all globbing up and I couldn't drive away until the sun came out. So anyway, learning about all this and smelling it and being up close and personal with vegetable oil, I decided way back then, early, I'm not going to eat this stuff. This is ridiculous. What is wrong with our food system? And working with some other companies in the food space and consulting, seeing how the people who work for these companies do not eat their own products and wouldn't feed them to their own children, that put up some red flags for me. And I'm like, oh, there must be more here. What's going on? But anyway, yeah, in the early vegetable oil times, there was a wave, there was a bubble. There is a lot of truth to this as well. This is a powerful fuel for tractors, for cars, for diesels. You can use it. And there are many ways to approach green energy. And the story that we've been fed this entire time is certainly a narrative. The truth is much more interesting and science-based and practical, and has a lot more about thinking about reducing and reusing than the recycling and spending more and buying new technologies. And it's like subtraction is usually the answer to all of this. And that certainly includes vegetable oil. I didn't need to know much more about it once I learned that it was a purely industrial process that, it gave something to us that ultimately made us sick. And as soon as I kicked those out 15 years ago, my health got so much better. I did other things at the same time, like getting rid of most gluten-containing grains and not being so very afraid of saturated fats and red meats and that sort of thing. But really, kicking out the vegetable oils, I think, was one of the biggest wins that I had early that I'm happy to, remain true to.
Yeah.
And I'm also very happy that that message is getting out there because, yeah, it's machine lubricant. It's gear oil. It's not something you need to be putting in your body. It doesn't matter if it's cheap. It's not food.
All right, friends, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Radical Health Radio. We got a fresh new podcast for you every Wednesday. If you enjoyed the show, consider liking, subscribing, reviewing, and rating us on your podcast platform. It helps to spread this message of radical health. We'll see you next week.